Hi, it's Coffee Co. Welcome to a new video. So today's video is going to be a deep dive on Regulus Black. So I'm making the first of my single character deep dives today, and I'm starting off with my personal own favorite character. I specifically hung this locket like high, like I made the chain short so that you could see it, and it's not in frame. Regulus Black is a major character in the Marauders fandom despite hardly existing in the canon. He is mostly made up with a few pieces of canon, like his death, being incorporated into the fan lore. He's one of the most popular characters, and he's involved with one of the biggest current ships in the fandom, Regulus. So how did Sirius's little brother, who was barely mentioned in the older fandom, become a giant character today? And who is he? Why do so many people care? Today I'll answer these questions. Before I start, I want to give a trigger warning that I will be discussing a lot of parental abuse as well as parental transphobia and homophobia. So, who is he? To summarize, canonically, Regulus Arcturus Black, RAB, is the little brother of Sirius Black. He was born in 1961 and died in 1979, at the age of 17. He was sorted into Slytherin during his time at Hogwarts and played Seeker on their Quidditch team. He became a leader and took the Dark Mark at the age of 16, but he flipped on Voldemort. Regulus was the first person to ever find out about Voldemort's Horcruxes and stole and hid the real Slytherin locket from Voldemort before his death. Regulus, in mine and in many others' opinions, is one of the most complex characters in the Marauders fan lore, but why is that? Regulus was born in 1961 to his mother and father, Walburga and Orion Black. It's really hard for me to say Walburga with a B because I am so used to her name being spelled with a P, but I will try my best. He grew up a part of the noble and most ancient House of Black, which is a fancy term for his family. His family, however, is not an ordinary one. The Blacks are a pure-blood family, firmly believing that only pure-blood wizards are ethically correct. Their family motto is toujours pur, which means always pure in French. They are so into this notion that Regulus's parents are actually cousins. Yeah, the House of Black is a very incestuous one. Regulus grew up in a household where he and his older brother, Sirius, were always expected to act accordingly. They always had to be tidy and present, only speaking when spoken to, perfect and well-mannered at all times. They had to be the perfect heirs, the perfect purebloods that they quote-unquote were. The Black ideology came fairly easy to Regulus. He was considered the perfect son. However, for his brother Sirius, all the noble Black stuff didn't come anywhere near easy. Sirius was loud, whereas Regulus was quiet. Sirius liked having long hair, and Regulus liked his hair short. Sirius was an extrovert, and Regulus an introvert. Sirius frequently got into trouble with their parents growing up. They didn't approve of how their eldest son behaved. Regulus was disapproving of this, but he still cared for his brother. And despite their differences, Regulus and Sirius grew up very close. This all changed, though, once Sirius turned 11 and went to Hogwarts. The Blacks historically had all been sorted into Slytherin House, even the members of the family that had been disowned, like Andromeda. Sirius, at 11 years old in 1971, stepped up to the sorting hat and changed history. He was the first Black to ever be sorted into a house other than Slytherin, being put in Gryffindor instead. Walburga and Orion were outraged at this. A year later, when it was Regulus's turn to be sorted, he followed the family tradition and was sorted into Slytherin House. Separated by houses and growing differences in opinion, a rift began to form between the Black brothers. They were no longer close and didn't often speak. Regulus was being influenced by their parents, Sirius was being influenced by his friends, the Marauders. During his first year at Hogwarts, Regulus made his own group of friends. Barty Crouch Jr., Evan Rosier, Pandora Rosier, and Dorcas Meadows. Both of the Black brothers disapproved of the other's friend group, not thinking that either group were good influences on what's right in the wizarding world. During his time at Hogwarts, Regulus quickly soared in his classes, being a very gifted student. Many things had come easily to Regulus during his life. He was naturally talented at many things. Flying, music, studies. He was great at them all. And Regulus tended to keep to himself, not letting many people other than his friends close. As the years passed at Hogwarts, Regulus ended up becoming Seeker on Slytherin's Quidditch team. He made Professor Slughorn's prestigious shelf and commanded respect among the other Slytherins, his family name being Power. With years passing and the brothers growing up, the distance between them grew as well. Sirius began actively disliking Regulus as he aligned himself with their family's policies and notions. Regulus didn't challenge his parents' beliefs as his older brother did, and at least somewhat did believe in the hate that he was being taught. His pureblood friends, specifically Evan and Barty, might have also influenced his beliefs at the time. Not to throw them under the bus, but yeah, they weren't great influences on him. During Regulus's 4th year and Sirius's 5th year, the brothers were back home for winter break. Around this time, the First Wizarding War is beginning. Voldemort is gaining fans and starting to turn people into Eaters. The Blacks are loyal supporters of his, Walburga and Orion heavily agreeing with Voldemort's campaign of hate. It's during dinner one night that Walburga and Orion try to force Sirius, only 15 years old, to toast to and join the Dark Lord. Sirius, not believing in any of their pure-blooded mania, refuses. Walburga then uses an unforgivable curse, Crucio, on her own child and tries to torture her son into getting the Dark Mark. Sirius persists in his refusal. Regulus, who is 14, is watching his mother torture his brother. It's commonly assumed that Regulus was pleading with his mother to stop, and that he was also abused at the time, having Crucio, or Imperio, a curse that puts you under someone else's control, used on him to make him stop. After this horrible night, Sirius runs away and goes to the Potters. Before leaving, though, it's commonly assumed that Sirius asks Regulus to leave with him, or that Regulus watches him leave. In both instances, Regulus stays behind, too deep in their parents' brainwashing and too scared to speak out against them. After this, Sirius basically disowns Regulus as his brother. Regulus continues to try to speak to him, but Sirius doesn't listen. In Regulus' 6th year, he is forced to take the Dark Mark at 16. But unlike Sirius, Regulus takes it willingly. While being a teenager, Regulus is very easily influenced by the bullshit that his parents are spewing. Regulus, to some amount, does agree with the pure blood mentality, and while he isn't as vocal about those beliefs as others, like Barty or Snape, for an example, he doesn't go out of his way to stop any blood-related bullying he sees. He doesn't announce that he's a Death Eater, but he doesn't disprove rumors that he is one. When Sirius learns that Regulus took the Dark Mark, he fully cuts his brother off. The two don't speak to each other after this event. This is also where Regulus tends to break off in Jegulus fanfictions involving Regulus. Also at this point, tensions rise between his friend group because Dorcas and Pandora aren't hateful people and don't agree with the mentality that Barty, Regulus, and Evan share. Regulus doesn't attend his 7th year of Hogwarts during 1979, as the war had fully broken out at that point, and his parents and Voldemort expected him to uphold his Death Eater duties. In the way that the Marauders and the Order were fighting the war, Regulus was doing the same, just not on the right side. Until sometime in 1979, Regulus starts getting cold feet about this whole Voldemort wizarding war thing. He begins to question the Dark Lord after seeing how far he's willing to go to obtain his goals. The breaking point for Regulus is when Voldemort asks to use the Black House Elf creature. Regulus says yes, and in turn, Voldemort almost kills Creature, using him to test defenses around the Slytherin locket. Creature only escaped from the cave because of elf magic, a common occurring plot point of elves being able to operate in and out of places no one else can. When Creature shows back up at House Black, he tells Regulus what happened. Regulus had always been close with Creature and was one of the only people to treat the elf and other elves with respect, similar to Hermione. Regulus literally can't take any more at this point and flips on Voldemort. He figures out that the locket has to be connected to Voldemort's life, working out the whole Horcrux concept. He then goes back to the cave with Creature after creating a replica of the locket. Regulus drinks the water, potion, whatever it is, to obtain the real locket and gives it to Creature. Regulus puts an iconic note in the fake one that reads, oh wait, this isn't his note. Yes, my Regulus locket does say your mom in it. I think it's really great. Okay, anyways. Regulus puts an iconic note in the fake locket that reads, "To the Dark Lord, I know I will be dead long before you read this, but I want you to know that it was I who discovered your secret. I have stolen the real Horcrux and intend to destroy it as soon as I can. I face death in the hope that when you meet your match, you are mortal once more. Signed, R.A.B." However, when Regulus goes to leave the cave, the Inferni, the monsters beneath the water in the cave, I have no other way to describe them, that's what they are, rise above and drag Regulus down below. His final order to Creature is to save himself and destroy the real locket. Creature apparates out of the cave while Regulus drowns and dies at the age of 17. The real cause of his death isn't discovered until Harry and Hermione read the note inside the locket. Sirius hears about his brother's passing but believes that he was killed by Voldemort after getting cold feet. He never learns that Regulus died trying to help fight Voldemort, as the note is discovered a year after Sirius's own. I am unwell. If I think about that fact for too long, I lose my mind. Little note, there is a common headcanon that Pandora Rosier, Regulus's friend from Hogwarts, helped Regulus hunt the Horcruxes and find the locket. So yeah, that's Regulus's whole lore. That's his life. I'm now going to ask a few questions. Was Regulus Black a good person? Was he good or was he evil? One thing that instantly drew me to Regulus when I started learning all of that previous lore was how interesting of a character he is. The fact that he switches sides and sacrifices himself for the greater good. And the fact that no one knew any of it. The fact remains that yes, Regulus Black was a Death Eater at one point. He willingly took the Dark Mark. Or did he? He fully believed in Voldemort. Or did he? Very little is actually known about Regulus's thought process. what he did or didn't believe. So many people, when shaping his lore and fanon, question these very things. Because Regulus died in the name of good. He tried to help kill Voldemort. Regulus didn't know how many Horcruxes there were, so assuming that the locket were the only one, if he'd succeeded in destroying it, maybe he could have actually killed Voldemort. There is no doubt that at the end of his life, Regulus was taking a step in the right direction, disobeying his parents for the first and unfortunately only time in his life. He was fighting against the notions and ideology that had been drilled into him since birth. But is that enough? Is that enough to say that he was truly a good person? My personal thoughts are sorta, maybe, kinda, yes and no. Regulus Black, in my opinion, is a morally gray character. He is an antihero. The definition of antihero is, they may lack the strong morals, courage, or selflessness that we associate with heroes. Antiheroes often feel rejected by society and veer down a self-destructive path that leads in isolation or death. Yeah, that reflects Regulus pretty well. Regulus Black did good things in his life, being a friendly creature, stealing the locket. He also did bad things in his life, becoming a Death Eater. He was quiet about things that didn't affect him personally, but stood up passionately for causes that he did care about. He was really mean, but he was also very kind. The thing I always go back to when analyzing Regulus's character is why. It is the biggest question on my mind. Why does he do the things he does? Why does he make the choices he made? The biggest one being, why does he join the literal worst people ever? The biggest and most obvious reasoning for this is his upbringing. And this part's gonna get a little heavy, so bear with me if you want to skip very intense talk, skip to this time frame. No one is born hateful. No one is born prejudiced. You don't pop out of your mother and go, I hate whatever group of people, you know, it's taught. And in Regulus's case, every member of his family taught him this hate extensively. His parents pushed toujours peur on him as soon as he could speak. Regulus was scared to speak out against his parents, the few times he had, it resulting in injury or having an unforgivable curse used on him. But does this justify going to join a hateful group? No. There's no justification that exists for aligning yourself with hateful people like Voldemort was. But this explains why he did. I'm not trying to justify his actions, but I'm just trying to understand why. And usually if someone aligns themselves with hate groups, they would not be my favorite character in the media, but Regulus is, and that's because he flipped. He was taught to hate, but as his final act, he chose to start unlearning that hate. He basically says he hopes someone rocks Voldemort's shit as his last words. Pretty sick. I found a quote from a fanfiction that I'm reading right now, Just Lovers by Bizarre Stars, and it words my thought process about Regulus and his upbringing really well. You are but a child, and the fault lies on your parents for all the wrong that goes on in that house. They've built a home on that, an unstable one that you and Sirius should not have suffered at the hands of. You are not wrong for wanting to be a good son. It's the beliefs and actions that are required of a good son in that family that's wrong. 8. Some people try to argue that his only reason for swapping sides was because of Creature, but I feel like disobeying your entire lineage, your entire family, potentially like putting a target on your back, doing all that just for a house elf, one house elf, and having none of the beliefs of like, oh yeah, Voldemort is bad, it just doesn't seem realistic. I feel like Regulus realized what was wrong. I think it's unfair to say that he only did this because of one reason. To me, Regulus exists as a character who made bad choices but tried to redeem himself. And while he has done unarguably bad things, I don't think he is a bad person at heart. People are capable of change, and Regulus was willing to. And I really like that about him. Busting out the root beer. Root beer! Yeah, root beer! Now that we've analyzed his life and choices under a microscope, now let's talk about who he is as a person. The most important thing to understand about Regulus Black is that he's mean. And I say that in an affectionate way. He's cold, quick-witted, cutting, and sarcastic. Regulus isn't afraid to cut you down with his words, and he often gets the last laugh in fights. He's calm, collected, and calculating. He is an intellectual, which sounds funny, but it's true. He is an intellectual, highly valuing learning and the arts. Regulus can be soft-spoken, but he can also very easily get into shouting matches. And my air just turned on, I'm so sorry. Regulus enjoys solitude, often keeping to himself and only trusting a handful of people fully. He very much gives Black Cat energy. For as cold as he is, Regulus is very thoughtful. He cares a lot about his relationships and goes out of his way to make those he loves feel it. While not a very open or touchy person, he's very observant and notices things about those he cares about that no one else picks up on. Regulus Black, The Art of Noticing, or something like that. I bet that's a fanfiction title. He is truly just a poor little meow meow. No, I'm never letting that die. It can be hard to make him smile or laugh, but when he does, he lights up the whole room. he acts nonchalant, but he actually deeply cares, like a lot. Probably more than anyone else. Regulus has a handful of fancasts that are popular, but without a doubt the most common depiction of Reg is Timothée Chalamet. You will see him in 90% of Regulus edits. Specifically, Timothée Chalamet in Dune. The scenes where in the first movie he's on a rock, yeah, that's Regulus. The second most popular fan cast that I've seen is Mark Eidelstein, a Russian actor. He's basically Russian Timothée Chalamet, and I mean that as a compliment. I see this fan cast a lot specifically with Crimson Rivers, the Hunger Game AU, because of these specific shots, which honestly, yeah, makes a lot of sense. Whereas other Marauders era characters' ethnicities are commonly changed depending on headcanon, I feel like I've only ever seen white French Regulus. Sometimes the Black Brothers are headcanoned as Japanese, Asian, but I would say pretty confidently that the white Black Brothers are the overall majority. Regulus is 99% of the time depicted as a sickly looking Victorian boy with curly black hair and blue or gray eyes. He is commonly viewed as very skinny and like around 5'5" to 5'8", I would say. That's just my own idea, but I feel like most people would probably agree with like kind of short Regulus. Sometimes people portray him with two-toned hair, usually blonde or white. This is a headcanon that I love, and it's how I view him. If you couldn't tell by the white in my wig. I find that a lot of fan art of him is inspired by the fan casts or popular cosplays, so Regulus ends up looking pretty similar across the fandom, something that can't be said for other characters. Hello, editing me here. I just want to pop in and say that by popular cosplays, I am mainly referring to Ezekiel, Aaron, and Dorian. So yeah. I think he's one of the most uniform. Like, he looks pretty similar, and I feel like you can always kind of pick out who Regulus is, whereas other characters, their depictions and appearances can change wildly depending on who's drawing them or cosplaying, you know? He's just very classic like that. You know how I just called Regulus a sickly Victorian boy? Well, that's his personal style summed up. Regulus's style is very much gothic, dark academia, Victorian shit. He's very commonly depicted wearing a lot of button-up shirts. Bonus points for frilly and detailed, almost Lolita-looking shirts. Vests. Regulus Black loves a good vest. Black, gray, and brown dress pants, dress shoes, or green Converse are also very popular shoes for Regulus. You will often see people associating Regulus with green Converse. He wears a very dark color palette, same king, and basically dresses like he's ready to break out a classic novel with a million annotations in it at any point. For accessories, he wears stars. And stars. Oh, and stars. Also, maybe throw in some Leo jewelry. Regulus is commonly styled very sleek and put together. Black, white, green, and brown being the main colors that he's seen in. For jackets, he tends to wear, I don't know what they're called, but like the generic like black with lapels jacket. I'm going to break down some very common and popular headcanons. These aren't everything, and I'm sorry if I'm missing any, but I tried to like think of and write down like the most notable ones that I have always seen around. Number one, and definitely the most important one, is trans Regulus. This is the most popular and commonly accepted as, yeah, this is canon for Marauders lore headcanon. Regulus is very often depicted as a trans man. This headcanon rose to prevalence around the time that J.K. Rowling outed herself as the worst person alive, so it gained traction around the early 2020s, specifically on TikTok. I personally love this. Like, yes, let's make every single Marauders era character trans just to piss her off. I am on board all the way. My god. Trans Regulus obviously leads to a lot of deep scenes and dialogue in fan creations. A big part of Regulus' angst being that his parents, who are the worst people alive, are not accepting of him and continually view him as their daughter. The Black Fortune was supposed to belong to Sirius as he was the heir of House Black, but when Sirius ran away from home, this passed on to Regulus, the younger sibling. Trans Regulus headcanons see this not happening, as Walburga and Orion heartbreakingly don't recognize the existence of their own son. Trans Regulus is just one of the many queer Marauders headcanons that exists to give more representation in the fandom and make fans feel more seen. So, inherently a good thing, and if you disagree, get off of my channel! Just had to throw that in there so that we're all on the same page. Poet Regulus. A common headcanon for Regulus is that he really likes to read and write poetry. A lot of my favorite works involving Regulus see him as a poet. I don't know why, but literally every single one of my favorite things that portrays him, he is a poet nerd, so it's a common thing you'll see with him in this fandom. I think this headcanon makes a lot of sense considering his whole poor little meow meow Victorian looking ass vibe. Oh, completely also the fact that he writes a very like poetic note as his last words. So that's definitely where that came from. Maybe this is even partly canon because who else is like, it was I who discovered your secret? Like, bro, you did not need to be that dramatic. He was so dramatic. Spy Regulus. This is also like an AU, but a headcanon at the same time. This is the headcanon that if Regulus had survived the cave and the locket, that he would become a spy for the Order. I am personally a huge fan of this because it helps resolve the rift that formed between the Black Brothers. Thank God. Also, Spy Regulus would just be the coolest ever, especially because Regulus is known for being very good at magic. I know he could really fuck some Death Eaters up. Also, in this headcanon, he could rekindle his friendship with Dorcas, and in Regulus Fix, rekindle his relationship with James. An idea for this, though, that haunts me is Regulus having to face Evan and Barty on the battlefield. Like, imagine Dorcas and Regulus being sent on a mission and having to fight them to the death. It kind of breaks me. Animagus Reg. If you ever see Regulus portrayed as a black cat, this is why. This is where it comes from. There's a very common headcanon that when Regulus found out the Marauders were Animagus, he wanted to become one too, partly to outshine Sirius, which is hilarious. So he turns into a black cat while Sirius turns into a black dog. This is also why if you see videos of deer and cats, there's likely to be a comment going Regulus core underneath it. French Regulus. A common depiction of Regulus and the Black Brothers / the whole family is that they speak French. This is a very common thing to find in fan creations, and this comes from the Black family motto being "Tu je peux," which is French. This is especially a fun headcanon when you can speak French and Regulus is your favorite character. He's just like me for real. A few smaller random Regulus headcanons are: Regulus loves Quidditch and is very competitive. His Patronus is also a cat. He's great at potions, he plays piano, he's gay, or he's bi. When his hair is two-toned, it's because of Narcissa, and he is the closest with Narcissa out of all of his cousins. Narcissa Black, Malfoy, is his cousin, by the way. He's related to Bellatrix, Andromeda, and Narcissa. If you didn't know. Similar to headcanons, but here are some things, imagery, etc. that Regulus is commonly associated with. You know I had to do it to you. For the 100th time. On this channel. Regulus is associated with water. Yay! He drowns and his aesthetic is mainly water. Let's go, let's go. I already know that people are making jokes about this video being called a deep dive on Regulus who drowns, so. Regulus is very much associated with water, specifically like dark water. He's associated with green Converse, a lot, headphones, pianos, black cats, the colors green and black, stars, the Leo constellation, poetry, the Slytherin locket, dark academia, dark clothes, classical music, and the Victorian era. This is a personal thing, but I strongly associate the album How to Catch a Falling Knife by Gigi Perez with Regulus and the Black Brothers / Jegulus. The song The Man for Jegulus, Kill for You for Sirius? Hell yeah. I highly recommend that you listen to that album and those specific songs and think about those characters. It's great. It's actually very sad, but it's great. Regulus is a very popular character right now, and has been a staple main character in this fandom over the last 5 years, but Regulus has always been around in the Marauders fandom. He just wasn't nearly as popular as he is now. And his common fan cast used to be Scanlar Kynes, Edmund from Narnia, which honestly, I kind of get it. I see it. I see the vision. I do. The thing that really popularized Regulus as a character is the ship Jegulus, which is James Potter and Regulus Black. The ship started as a joke in the early 2020s in the TikTok Marauders fandom, but quickly stopped being a joke and turned into a titan of the fandom. It is without a doubt one of the top ships of the current era, if not the most popular. The fanfic author Bizarre Stars wrote 2 of the most popular and massive Jegulus fanfictions and helped the ship rise. Just Lovers Like We're Supposed to Be in 2021 and Crimson Rivers in 2023. I've made a whole video explaining Jegulus in detail, so if you are new to the fandom, Regulus, all the above, feel free to go check that out. Regulus has been involved in other ships in the past, like Barty Liss, Barty Crouch Jr., and Regulus Black, which has been around since the characters were introduced, but none of the previous ships involving Regulus have ever gotten this popular before. Regulus's name trends in July of 2005 when the Half-Blood Prince was released because of his locket note. Then trends again in 2008 when the Half-Blood movie Prince came out. Did I just say Half-Blood movie Prince? What? When the Half-Blood Prince movie came out. But around 2021 his name starts trending again because of, you guessed it, Regulus, and specifically just lovers being written. I will say, Regulus is obviously a character of his own. He doesn't have to be tied to a romantic pairing to have weight as a person, but the reason for his popularity as a character is because of this ship in particular. You don't have to be a Regulus fan, stan, whatever, to like Regulus. It's just that most times people are. And now I'm finally on to the last section of my Regulus brain rot, which is highlighting fanworks and my favorite portrayals of Regulus, because this is my channel and of course I'm going to talk about fanworks. Number 1, my favorite portrayal of Regulus Black ever is Dorian Nemoya in the Mystery Productions, specifically A Knight's Tale and The Ascendant. If you know nothing about this character and this video was your first introduction, I cannot recommend going and checking out these short films enough for a fantastic depiction of this character. A Knight's Tale is a film about James and Regulus falling in love, and The Ascendant is the scene in 5th year when Sirius runs away. As for fanfictions, I personally really enjoy Crimson River's Regulus. He's unhinged and I love that for him. His character goes through a lot of development over the course of that fic, and it was basically what cemented Regulus as my favorite Marauders character. He also has a really pretty outfit in that fanfiction, which I adore, which, fun fact, I actually made that whole costume and I just haven't gotten around to wearing it yet. One fanfiction that I have not read but always hear recommended is Only the Brave by Sol Musa. This is a Spy AU adjacent fanfiction where Regulus personally takes down Voldemort and hunts all of the Horcruxes. So basically the Deathly Hallows, but it's Regulus and it's gay! Another favorite of mine is All the Young Dudes, but specifically All the Young Dudes Sirius's perspective. Originally by Miss Kingbean and rewritten in Sirius's perspective by Rollercoaster Words. This is a spectacular fic for Black Brothers content. Some of the scenes between Sirius and Regulus in this fanfiction literally broke me. There were entire chapters where I sobbed throughout the entire thing. This is a must read in my opinion if you're a Black Brothers fan. It will break you and it's so worth it. And that is everything. That's my whole script that I wrote in one day because I went slightly insane. I think I'm gonna end up doing this kind of video on like most characters, do like individual dives. So let me know what character you want to see me go into depth about specifically next. I will say that I'm gonna try to post a video every week this month, so hopefully I can keep up with my own schedule and you guys will be fed on content this month. I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. Bye.